down!
Everyone, today we are going to be making an Irish javelin or a dart. This includes not just your standard javelin, it also has a throwing loop for your finger or your hand to get some extra leverage on the toss. And then of course I've included some fletching just to increase stability, because you know Dahoga stuff is as accurate as a fart in the wind. So let's watch this video and see how we can make an Irish javelin or dart. Very much like the sword, we start off with a flat surface, and in this case we also have a high pressure PVC pipe. Now I'd also like to add, please pay careful attention to the types of foam I have there. I have some pieces of pool noodle and some open cell sponge, then of course trusty duct tape, knife, scissors, contact adhesive, little pen thingy. And in this case I've cut out of cardboard some fins, and I've got my strap of scrap leather and the trusty heat gun. Heat gun here is just to increase the gluing process. Okay, cool. So the first thing I'm going to do is, using that little bit of the camping mat foam, I'm gluing that to the tip over there. You'll notice over here, unlike the sword, I've actually made the tip slightly higher up, because essentially what you're going to be using this for is, because this is a thrusting styled weapon, unlike the sword I made in the previous video, we need to put a lot more focus on the tip of the weapon. And once I've added that little bit of camping mat foam, I'm putting half the pool noodle down the tip. So you got about 4 or 5 finger widths between the tip of the PVC and the tip of the foam. Now you see what I'm doing here is I am attaching the fins before I put any duct tape on the back, and I just want to have those fins equally spaced apart. You see where I've used the marker over there just to make sure that they're nice and equally apart, much the same way you do arrow fletching. Now you also have a look here. What I've done with the cardboard is I've actually split the base of the cardboard so that it glues a little more firmly onto the back of the PVC pipe. You can use any cardboard. In this case I used an old fruit box, because the thing is, these fins in battle, they're going to take a bit of punishment, and you're going to have to hand cut them because you won't just somehow be able to buy these. Something to point out, after I glued these on, I actually made those fins ever so slightly smaller. They were a bit big the first time round. You don't want your fins too big or else it slows down your projectile. Now you see what I'm doing here is just having the little bit of pool noodle on the tip support sort of wedged onto the camping mat isn't enough for a spearhead. So what I'm doing is I've got a small piece of pool noodle that you can see I've cut there, it's lying on the board, and I've got a longer strip. I'm going to glue that little small piece at the tip of the javelin, and then I'm going to go over with that longer strip to give it sort of like a blade-like surface, a blade-like structure. And once I've glued that in place and just snipped it so it's a little bit neater and it's got a little bit of an attempt at a spearhead shape, that's when I add just one more layer of glue, and I put my much softer spongy foam on. Now I want you to pay close attention to what I'm going to do here with the duct tape. If I am to push that duct tape too firmly over that spongy foam right at the tip, there is no point for that spongy foam. So I'm very, very, very carefully putting that duct tape over it, enough so it sticks neatly, but I'm not pressing so hard so that that foam is actually compressed up against the pool noodle. The reason being is when you strike someone with this, you want that little bit of a pff of air as it hits someone. I'll use a similar technique when making spears. Now, of course, I don't need to do this with swords because the stabbing strike from a sword isn't normally that hard. Our swords are also made more often for swinging as opposed to stabbing. If you were to swing with this type of spearhead design, what will eventually happen is if you strike with the tip of that padding, it'll actually break on the inside and you'll have the tip come off. Now, you don't need to cover the shaft in duct tape, but I do that for a little bit of aesthetic and some additional firmness, just in case it might break. That duct tape gives a sort of extra boundary to it, but the most important thing here is you want those fins
to have a lot of duct tape on them. As I said beforehand, this javelin's going to get stepped on, it's going to get beaten in the back, it's going to be tossed back at your shield wall. So those cardboard fins there, you need them nice and firmly covered in duct tape so that any moisture doesn't get through and ruin your cardboard, and then also just that little bit of extra protection. And then that's pretty much finishing up on the shaft and finishing up on the fins there. And this is pretty much all you really need for your standard javelin. So just to reiterate some important things you need to consider, you can use typical electrical PVC for this. However, it is once again highly suggested that you get plumbing PVC, high pressure hose PVC, just because it's going to last a little bit longer and you're not going to have your brand new javelin breaking when someone steps on it or accidentally swings it. And then you'll see that the tip is very specifically designed to have the weapon stab people as opposed to swinging and striking. If you were to use the same tip design for a sword, your padding would eventually actually break if you swung and struck something too close to the tip too often. Now what I'm doing here is I'm adding that little leather strip. So I've essentially found the central weight of the javelin first, and I'm attaching that little leather strip there. So this is going to improve it slightly. It's not going to improve your javelin as much as an atlatto. I may be making an atlatto in a future video, but I haven't made one before or used one before. And this is basically based on some information I came across on how the Irish made their javelins in your Middle Ages. And that little loop over there, it means that you can carry the javelin a little bit more easily, and also means when you throw it, you're going to put your finger or your hand in there and you get that little bit of extra leverage from the leather or the rope or whatever you're using. I'm using leather in this case because it's a little bit more comfortable and neater. It gives it a little bit of aesthetic. And there you have it.
And right, there you have it. Have fun.